I'm going to mostly turn things over to Dr. Nontando Hadebe, who is going to lead our program and kind of guide us through some of our panelists tonight. But by way of introduction, I just want to say a few words about Dr. Nontando Hadebe. Dr. Hadebe is a theologian, and she specializes in African theology, pastoral and contextual theology, and feminist and womanist theology, and liberation theology. She's working in South Africa right now as the international coordinator for Side by Side, which is a gender justice organization that seeks to eradicate violence against women or gender-based violence. She has a doctorate in theology from St. Augustine College, and having previously completed undergraduate and postgraduate degrees at the university, and I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Her original studies, interestingly enough, were in law in Zimbabwe, where she specialized in law administration of deceased estates before turning to theology. Dr. Nontando Hadebe has traveled twice now with me to both Rome and Greece, where she infuses a lot of African culture and expression into our spirituality and our understanding of the sites that we're seeing on these pilgrimages. And she's also an invaluable member of the FutureChurch board. So welcome, Dr. Nontando Hadebe, and to everyone else who's going to be presenting for us tonight. I'll turn things over to you, Nontando.
What a joy, what an absolute joy to be here with all of you. And so I'm holding the book that has brought us together. And I want to extend a heartfelt thanks to Russ and Debs. You made this possible. And so thank you very much. And you both have invested in me in so many ways, and being part of FutureChurch has really been something that has helped me to evolve in many ways. So thank you very much. And I also want to thank those that have come. So I see the number is now 199. Wow. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I trust that this is going to be an opportunity. I love the fact that it's in the Woman a Race series, because what we have done in this book, a time like no other, COVID-19 in Women's Voices, was to make sure that when the history of COVID-19 is written in the history books or it's discussed, the women's voices will be at the center. There will be a book where people will say, this is what the women were saying during that time. And that is really part of the motivation for this book. And so I will say more about the book and to tell the story, and also to speak about the circle of concerned African women theologians, because they are the birthers of this movement of amplifying African women's voices, ensuring that theologies done in Africa, religion done in Africa is reflecting on the stories of women. And I'll say a bit more about that. But again, to give it that African flavor and to give it the energy that we need, I'm going to turn to one of our contributors and our authors here, Wulelwa. She wrote her song in the book. And she's also a minister in the Anglican Church, a phenomenal woman who is doing a lot of work amongst the youth. And she is gracing us with her voice. So I will speak after her, but let her just set the tone of this meeting together. So over to you, Wulelwa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mama Hadebe. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I won't be silenced. I won't be cancelled. I won't be defeated. I won't be afraid. I won't be silenced. I won't be cancelled. I won't be defeated. I won't be afraid. You can chain me, put my light on and hang me on a tree. Try to bury me, but I'll still speak. You can chain me, put my light on and hang me on a tree. Try to bury me, but I'll still speak. I won't be silenced. I won't be cancelled. I won't be defeated. I won't be afraid. I won't be afraid of you. I won't be afraid of you. No, I won't be afraid of you. So you can chain me, put my light out and hang on a tree. Try to bury me, but I'll still speak. I won't be silenced. I won't be cancelled. I won't be defeated. I won't be afraid of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bulelwa. You just set the tone for our discussion on the book, because women's voices are not going to be silenced during this time of COVID. We know that pandemics, natural disasters, all kinds of tragedies that happen, that the most vulnerable group are women and children. And so we decided as the Circle of Women Theologians that we are going to amplify the voices of women in South Africa, because we woke up every day to news about gender-based violence, to news about yet another woman being killed. And we said, no, we are going to ensure that women will not be silenced. And so we thank you, Buli, for that opening song that sets the context. So I want to begin with an African, I'm going to be using African proverbs as I describe how the book came together. I think the most famous African proverb that we all know is that it takes a village to raise a child. So when we are thinking about this book project, we say it took a village, literally a village, to give birth to this book, a village of phenomenal authors and the diversity, because in a village there is diversity. So we've got phenomenal authors that are diverse. The youngest author is 12 years old, and she wrote a chapter that says the last breath that my mother took. I don't think I have the right words, but just to capture that we wanted the voices of all groups of women. We didn't want, because the circle is mostly academic women that write from the stories of African women, so that when theologians go into the library or when they are setting books, they are able to integrate the voices of women in theological training. But we wanted to break that mold and to say that COVID is affecting all women, and to create that space where all women's voices in their diversity could share their stories. And so in the book, and my co-editors are going to give you more information, you will sense this diversity of literature. We've got poetry, we've got stories, we've got theological reflections, we've got songs, we've got all kinds of literature, so that the women's voices can be channeled in multiple ways. And so that is really one of the characteristics of the book. And how did it come to be? There's also an African saying that says one coal does not make a fire, So we had different influences. You know, the first influence was the lockdown and the circle of women theologians coming and saying, what do we do? Because we know that during the HIV and AIDS and every pandemic, this has been the tradition of the circle to say, we are going to intentionally amplify the voices of women to see the impact of what is going on so that women's voices are heard. The theology that is produced at that time reflects the experiences of women. And so that is how it all came together. We would meet every Friday and each woman there would bring her own views. And we wanted in the invitation of stories to ensure that no one is excluded because of not being able to be conversant in English or in any other impediments. We wanted to get those stories raw and fresh from women. We wanted the theologians to come and reflect so that at this particular moment in history, the voices of women are not erased, but the voices of women are heard loud and clear. The experiences of women are heard loud and clear in their own voices. And so we wanted that, to be something that is at the center of this book. Multiple voices, diversity of women. So we have all races, we've got artwork. And so I don't want to take a lot of time because I'm going to ask my two co-editors, and I want to say something about the co-editors of the book, and they will be sharing the different sections so that you have a feel of the book, that they brought in sacrifice, they did sacrifice their time, and they brought in their gifts. Professor Sue, with her academic knowledge, was able to go through the papers, the theological papers, and engage and work with the theologians. The rest of us, we engage with the stories. And I often say about Daniela, she is responsible for the feel, the aesthetics of the book, the artwork there, the way it looks and everything. She brought her gifts as well. So this was really a village work. We have donors who invested in the book. When we started, we really didn't even have a budget, but we believed in these stories. We believed in what the book was trying to accomplish. So I will stop there so that I can give the co-editors an opportunity to be able to give a summary of the different contexts. There are 6 sections in the book, and I would like them just to, to summarize that. So over to Daniela and Sue, and thank you so much for the great work that made this book possible together with the village.
Thank you so much, Nontando. And just to say that we're missing the fourth person in our team, Nobesutu Tom, who's unfortunately had to attend to a family emergency and is unable to be with us. So Sue and I will give you the overview of the different sections of the book. The theme of the first section is tribute and trauma. It sets the context for the rest of the book. The traumatic experiences of women violated and lost during COVID-19 must be remembered and preserved as a tribute to all women. This section begins with a theological reflection by myself entitled COVID-19, Gender-Based Violence and the Church, a church gender activist's reflections. I weave the stories of women survivors of violence with theological themes and questions that challenge churches to intervene and act. The stories elaborate further on the themes of tribute and trauma. The 3 tributes to the loss of women's lives who've also been, the book has been dedicated to, are called Death and Mourning During a Pandemic, The Passing of Elise Brown by Nobesutu Tom, Tamsin Allison, Loving Revolutionary by Emma Kennedy, and myself and another friend called Cookie Edwards, and Letter to Mahlamba and Lopfu by Bekisisa Mncube, who is the only male author in the book. It is a tribute to victims of femicide. In Lockdown, Fighting Memories is Tshegofatso Mekwe's story about her experiences of lockdown in China, where she was at the time, that brought back memories of her experiences of sexual violence. 18-year-old Tari Nyamayaro's powerful and haunting poem from the grave called Auditioning for My Funeral concludes this section.
Unmute yourself, Sue.
Oh, yeah, you have to unmute.
Trying to be quiet. Thank you, Daniela. The second section of the book is titled Lament. And it's full of tears, but it is also full of strength. So it begins with a longer reflection on lamenting by Marisha Singh Naicker. Then there's a heartrending story, the day my mom took her last breath. Then Marisha's daughter, Mahalia, did a reflection also about what the pandemic meant to her. Then Tiara, who will speak later, uses the image of Groundhog Day into Groundhog Year because life just kept repeating as COVID gathered strength. Martha Mapissuri is a theologian studying in Belgium. And when she went to study, she had to leave her young son behind with friends and relatives in Zimbabwe and here in South Africa. And so Martha describes the pain of that. And then there are a couple of other reflections: physically distanced but socially close, ashamed, unearthed, and restored. What's remarkable about this section, the whole book actually, is how people were absolutely totally honest about their feelings. They didn't cover up their feelings at all. They didn't say, well, if I say this about my experience, maybe I won't get published. But they said it, and the pain reverberates.
Thanks, Sue. The theme of the third section is ministry challenges, and it reflects the stories and challenges and experiences faced by women clergy and laity in the context of COVID-19. The first one by Diane Williams sets the context with her article called Feed My Sheep, a reflection on the online celebration of the Eucharist in lockdown. And it really tackles one of the most contested discussions, I don't know if in other countries, but certainly in South Africa, during lockdown, which was access to the Eucharist in the context of online services. Drawing from her theology of the Eucharist and experiences of her members, she presents a renewed theology of inclusion. This is followed by two stories from women in ministry facing their own unique challenges. Reverend Nokutula Dladla confronts her own vulnerability as she wrestled with her experiences of COVID-19 in her article called Breathing Anew. And then differently, but in a similar vein, Reverend Sepati Ngobo, in her story, called A Story of a Woman's Lockdown, Personal Reflections, shares her discernment process that led to her starting an innovative online ministry for women. And then there are two other articles from practitioners in the field of spiritual direction and narrative therapy. Dr. Anna-Marie Pauline Campbell reflects on issues emerging for women from her experiences of spiritual direction in her paper called Spiritual Accompaniment in a Time of Pandemic. And Nikki Dixon, who's a narrative therapist, describes her experiences of birthing new stories, an image that Nontando has already alluded to in her chapter called The Midwife. And the section ends with a short poem by Eba Dube entitled Amidst the Chaos.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniela. Excuse me. Moving on to part 4, which is titled Trials and Faith. And in the articles, we hear both. I think we hear more faith than trials because the women's voices are so strong. The section begins with a reflection on the book of Job by Madhupani Masanya, a prominent biblical scholar in South Africa. And I'll just read the titles. I won't tell you so much the content, just
titles. Life Redefined, Order Reordered, Faith Still the Constant. Am I Safe? Journey with Me Through My Unknown Winter. New Beginnings. Gratitude in the Midst of the Pandemic. The Power of Connection During a Pandemic. Raped Girl, Healing and Harmony. And I'll Still Speak. So while there's a lot of pain in these articles, there's resilience and strength and courage. As I said when I talked about section 2, putting yourself out in this public way is daunting, but these women really had the courage to do this.
So the fifth section is called Our Multiple Experiences. And it brings together a kind of diverse collection of stories and poetry and reflective meditations. And they really, when I read you the titles and the authors, you'll see the incredible diversity of the experiences of the women that have written these stories and the kind of tapestry that is kind of pulled together by these various stories and their experiences. Again, like Sue, very striking the honesty and the authenticity of their experiences. The stories are The Dark Night of the Soul by Rooks Modley, My Story of Gratitude by Christine Assey, who's also known as Chubby, The COVID-19 Effects on My Mental Health and Ministry by Ntusi, Reflections of My Experiences with a Coronavirus-Infected Family Member by M.G. Ngwepe, and COVID-19, The Face of Real Pain by Busisiwe Gasa. And the poems are just called, the one is just simply called Letter 01 by Duduzile Pile, and Passion of Our Lord, Passion of Our People by Audrey Sutherland. And the section ends with a reflection from Francis Carrera entitled COVID-19 Into the Wilderness with Jesus.
Thank you, Daniela. The last part is titled Hoping, not hope, but hoping. And when, as editors, we discussed this, we wanted to make it a verb, not a noun that you could hold and say, I have hope, but the dynamics of a verb, hoping. The longest section is an extended theological reflection by Dr. Selena Palm on hoping. She uses the work of a theologian named Kashegian, who gives us 5 contours of hoping: seeing time differently, accepting finitude, challenging transcendence, an ethic of risk, and reconceptualizing transformation. Deep and very well worth reading. Then we have some meditations and blessings by 2 Anglican priests, Tracy Bell, Lockdown Rose Blessings, and Lament and Assurance by Janet Trisk. The book closes with a postscript by Nontando, who reflects on her experience of having COVID and the multitude of feelings that she experienced when she was diagnosed positive. So as a member of the editorial team, I just want to say when the book came out in August, well, yeah, it's wonderful. It's even more wonderful than I thought it was going to be. We worked so hard on it. And then here it is. Here is our book.
Thank you so much, editors. And as Daniela said, one of our other editors wasn't able to join us. So we're just going to go straight into the contributors. And we're going to begin with Tari. She wrote the poem, Auditing for My Funeral. Tari is an 18-year-old slam poet and activist working to bring light to critical social issues across the globe. So we just asked her to just say her experience and just read a portion from her poem. Thank you so much, Tari. We appreciate you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and for that wonderful introduction. So my poem was called Auditioning for My Funeral, and it was written from a perspective of a dead girl lying in her casket, looking over her funeral, right? So basically I wrote it as planning for my death during the time of the gender-based violence pandemic that had gripped the country, and the femicide rates were so high. And it was at the time of Uyinene's death, and then following Kwasa's death afterwards, which really impacted me because I was really seeing myself as one of these girls, you know, and counting down the days to when it would be my name on the news, or when it would be my parents who have to go identify my dead body, or when it has to be me going to the post office and not coming back, which are really real fears that young girls in this country have. And so Audition Tape to My Funeral was a way for me to express all of these complicated feelings that I was feeling at the time, and get my message out there to say, you know what, we also feel it, not just the people who are gone, but the people who stay behind. We are also counting down the days till it's us. We are literally waiting to die. And that is a very scary place to exist, to be so scared to go to the shops, to be so scared to go to school, to get on the bus, because you're very aware that you might not come back. And so that's where the poem was born. And I'm going to read just 2 stanzas from the end of the poem, which I think really drive home the point that I was trying to make. No, my funeral will be the best to ever be done. One for the history books, I swear. There's 294 days left before I turn 19. 294 more days of waking up with the sun, of breathing in air before a man claims he's right to my life or he's right to my body. 294 more days of being terrified to walk outside, of hugging my mother tight so when I'm gone, she remembers the feel of my arms around her, of pausing at the door to wave goodbye to my dad, half a see you later and half a goodbye, in case this is the last goodbye that I have, the last hug, the last kiss, the last time I get on the bus, the last time they see me as I am now, alive. I'm not sure if I'll make it to this time next year, or even if I'll make it to the end of this day. See, like every other woman in this country, I'm living on borrowed time, waiting for my turn, for my big debut as victim number 1,000 and something. So here it is, the audition tape to my funeral. Was that good enough? Thank you.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much, Tari. That was profound. We'd like to move on to our next author, and that is Reverend Siapati. Reverend Siapati is a mother, wife, and Anglican priest, and is passionate about women's ministry. Over to you, Reverend Siapati. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Go ahead and try again, Siapati. There we go.
There we go. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for welcoming me into the space and just allowing me to be, to be heard and for my voice to just be affirmed. I'm here just to do a short reflection on my contribution. So I must say that when the team reached out to everyone and put word out for submissions of stories, I saw that there was just a genuine interest in my experience as a woman. And so I was excited just knowing that my experience were considered valuable and worthy, that they could possibly carry a truth that could mean something to someone else. So I was really excited to start writing my own story. But then again, the same invitation also found me busy. At that time I was
serving as an assistant priest because I am an Anglican priest. And we had to rethink the whole concept of being church as opposed to simply doing church. So I committed to doing online evening prayers for the first 50 days in lockdown. But on top of that, I also had other projects that I was busy with in the home, you know, the new recipes, the new exercise programs, the sorting out of the library. So I did so much. But in reality, all these things that I had made up, I think, were a procrastination exercise just to avoid sitting in my own experiences and taking my own experiences in. So writing my own lockdown life story put me in a position where I could reflect on my personal life, where I could reflect on God's ministry and sort of ask God where to from here, you know. For a while, I realized that I was very tired, but I never bothered to take the time to ask myself why. If I'm truly doing what God has called me to do, then why am I feeling so drained? So writing my story gave me an opportunity to just pray through some of these questions and to enter into a process of discernment and hopefully find a way of ministering to other women and tap into my own giftedness and do what I felt that God was calling me to do. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my own story. Lockdown 2020 brought with it many mixed emotions. The first emotion was excitement. I happily welcomed the decision by the government to finally put strict measures in place to control the pandemic. I was even happier for a much needed break and time with my family. In the first 50 days of lockdown, I had the privilege of praying live on Facebook with my family and my friends, an experience that brought me joy and peace of mind during the lockdown. Nothing can explain how much praying consistently with people in a new way of connecting really fills the heart with joy and a hunger to create such a sacred space of prayer for your own family and a greater online community. It wasn't too long into the lockdown period that being enclosed confronted me and forced me to face my other emotions: loss, grief, pride, and even confusion. A lot had happened in my life in a space of a year. And with my busyness as a priest, I somehow felt there were experiences, ideas, and emotions I had stored up. Some of these experiences, ideas, and emotions needed to be intentionally kept in the storage of my own heart and mind. I needed to keep thinking on them, meditating on them, and getting in touch with them. Other experiences needed much decluttering because I did not allow myself the courtesy to deal with each emotion that came with my vast experience. When the excitement of exercising and trying new recipes wore off, the decluttering and restorage process began. I remember that I had become a mother, unexpectedly lost my mother and my grandmother, my strong pillars, finished my honors degree, was ordained a priest, all in my first year as a married woman, living in a new province amongst a new people. It has been a tiring year. I have felt joy, sadness, grief, and a deep sense of loss while trying to find my feet as a newly ordained priest. And with all the good training I was receiving, learning the do's and don'ts of ministry, it became clear to me that somewhere in the hierarchical structures within the church space, my place as an assistant priest had compelled me to put on hold some of my dreams and my hopes for my own ministry. I've always loved the ministry of teaching, and especially teaching the common women on the pew. To me, this means a ministry to women as ordinary as my mother, my grandmothers, my aunts, and my friends. These are women whose experiences show that they carry a lot on their shoulders, and somewhere in their struggle of being women, I believe that the life-affirming gospel of Jesus needed to be preached and to be taught to ones such as these, beginning from where they are. I have done what I could at parish level within the various structures that existed, and it had given me joy to become a participant in some of the women's groups that exist within the church. However, I felt I had to stay within the parameters of how things were and somewhat more of a participant observer, bringing nothing new and certainly not teaching and preaching this gospel to women as I had so hoped. Was my calling as a priest requiring me to adjust to systems and structures that existed? Or was my calling as a priest inherently equated to bringing about inevitable change in the community I serve? It was hard to discern. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Siapati. And I think we had wanted to hear from Anne-Marie, but before we do that, we have Virginia with us. She has the title as the one who bought the most books and distributed the most books to her family and friends. And during that time, Virginia, you lost your father and grandfather. You're a lay minister, warden in the Anglican Church, feisty, compassionate, and loving person. So we just want a few sentences of how, as you were distributing the book, how was it received because of time, and just your reflections, and then we'll just move on to bring this to a wrap.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Doc. When the writing came in, it found me in a space of grief. I had lost my father, and 2 weeks down the line, I've lost my grandfather. It has been a very interesting time, because I think when 2020 came in, I had lots of plans for my life because I was turning 40. But life being life humbled me and sort of like took me back to who I am, who I needed to be, and sort of like reflect on my relationship with God as well. My family has been very supportive. The book has given us an opportunity to speak, reflect on the both men we have lost, who have loved dearly, who has the strength and the pillar of the family. It's still difficult to view our life without them. Every day we go through things new. You think I should be calling one of them saying, this is happening. The launch of the book, having a conversation with my sister saying, they'll be laughing to say, why would you write? And having jokes about why would you want to share your story. It's still difficult now to speak about them in past tense. But I think the book has given me an opportunity to honor them and remember them in a good way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Virginia. Russ, do we have time for Anne-Marie, or we can go on and ask Ulewa to do the last song? What is your feeling on that?
Sure, let's go ahead, and I think it's a short clip from Anne-Marie, and then
Yes.
we'll do the closing song, and then we can do some question and answer.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Nontando.
What a special moment this is, as we have an opportunity to speak to one of our contributors Dr. Anne-Marie Pauline Campbell. And she wrote a chapter entitled Spiritual Accompaniment in the Time of the Pandemic. And you'll see that on page 111 in our book. And so let me say something about Anne-Marie. She is a Catholic lay woman who heads up the spirituality work of the Jesuit Institute, South Africa. So very warm welcome to you, Anne-Marie, and we are so grateful for your contribution to the book. Here it is. And so I'll give you an opportunity just to share with us what it meant for you to write this article, your experiences, and then to read for us a portion from your chapter. So thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Nontando. It's lovely to be here. I think that writing this piece for the book was a really profound experience for me, because it gave me the opportunity to reflect on how our ministry has really changed and being shaped and expanded through this time of pandemic. I realized very early on that many women were struggling with isolation. There was gender-based violence that was exacerbated in the pandemic, worries about children, economic struggles, and women were phoning and really wanting some kind of spiritual help and support. And it was difficult because we couldn't use our usual ways of working because we were in lockdown and we weren't able to meet in person with people. And so we realized that we needed to look to other ways of trying to really connect and support those women particularly. And things like Zoom and WhatsApp voice notes, for example, where people didn't have enough data to be able to participate in the kind of retreats we offered via Zoom. So there were a whole lot of different mechanisms, and trying to use Facebook, for example, as well. So my article was really about trying to reflect on that journey that we had to make to really find a way to connect with women, men as well, but mainly with a lot of women who were struggling hugely in this time. And we found it was an immense opportunity to connect with women that might not otherwise have been able to come on retreats. And so I want to read just a little bit from the article about some of what we experienced in that journey. I'm reading from page 114. While all the retreat spaces offered emotional support in the sense of someone who would listen, they also helped the women to lean into their relationship with God and sometimes to grapple with difficult questions about faith in a time when they were not able to connect with their ordinary faith community. Those of us who engage in the work of spiritual accompaniment faced a situation of grappling with many of the same struggles as those we were accompanying. It is difficult to listen and to hold the pain of many others when it so strongly echoes one's own. To listen to someone who was unable to be with her parent in hospital when they died of COVID-19 stirs up one's own anxiety. Even listening to the more ordinary struggles of missing visits with friends and families, worries about job security, or battling to feel a sense of God's closeness resonated with the personal experience of the retreat guides, and we in turn needed safe spaces to process the complex mixture of feelings. The pandemic has intensified the struggles that were already in people's lives and made the questions they were grappling with feel more urgent. For many in spiritual direction, it has been a time of asking significant questions, of feeling the need to discern God's call with greater urgency, and yet it is also a time in which patient waiting and holding the discomfort of unknowing seem to be the invitation. The pandemic, I believe, will have lasting emotional and spiritual impact for months and years to come. This time has asked of us the courage to risk, to try new ways of spiritual accompaniment, to trust that while face-to-face presence may be the ideal, God is not limited and can and does work in ways that we could not have foreseen.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for just describing and reading from your very inspiring chapter. And I hope that our listeners and our, other people present here have been inspired. So thank you very much, and God bless you. Any final words that you want to say?
I think it's just that this pandemic has been such a time of immense challenge, but also an opportunity for us to discover God at work in so many different ways.
Thank you very much. God bless you. And we look forward to accompanying you in other projects. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, Nontando. God bless.
Thanks so much, Russ. And I want to particularly thank the contributors, the editors, Tari, Siapati, Virginia, Daniela, Sue, and many that are attending as well, and Virginia. So now we're going to close with the song from, yes, we are going to close with the song from Buli. And thank you for your attention. Thank you, Buli.
Thank you so much, Ma. This song I had written for my sister. She was going through a whole lot last year. So it goes like this. Look into the light and try to see the other side. It may seem like darkness. He'll come around and make it right. You might feel like you're falling, might feel like you're out of grace. He'll come around and make it right. Do you believe in the higher power? Do you know the supernatural? He'll come around and make it right. Do you believe? Do you believe he will come from the clouds? He will come from the clouds. Yes, he will come. Do you believe? Do you believe? Do you believe? Yes, he will come from the clouds. He will come. Do you believe? Do you believe? Do you believe? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the gift of your voice and inspiration. And what a way to end our program and ask ourselves, do we believe in this context of COVID, in the challenges that women are facing, and in the challenges that you, our hosts, are facing? So over to Debs and Russ for the question and answer. And once again, thank you for this time.
Thank you, Nontando, and everyone. What a beautiful, beautiful program. What a beautiful book. We're going to open it up. We only have about 8 minutes left, but we would love to have your questions and comments. So the way we do that is you can use that little symbol that raises your hand, or you can physically raise your hand and let me know, or you can also unmute, but I think raising the hand works better. So I have 2 things that came to me via the chat, Nontando. One was, and I'll ask for the person who asked me, did the statistics show a change in the violence against gender violence that was occurring during the pandemic? I mean, is that what caused you to bring this whole effort together, or did you see this horrific rise in violence, or or was it more anecdotal, or women know these things? But I was just curious. They were asking about the statistics. That's one question. And then the other is, can people get the book?
Thank you very much. We have a gender expert here, Daniela, to assist me. But I do know that the statistics during COVID of gender-based violence just went through the roof. And some of the instances that Terry described of the brutality of that violence was something that really shook the nation. But Daniela, would you like to add something to that?
Thank you. I hate the word expert, but thank you. You will see in my theological reflection, I actually begin with a reflection on the actual situation in the context during the different levels of lockdown. So in South Africa, we began with a very strict level of lockdown at lockdown level 5, and nobody was allowed to move anywhere. And there was a dramatic reduction in reported cases. And the other thing that happened during lockdown, the heavy lockdowns, has been that alcohol sales were banned. And so there was definitely a reduction in reported cases and serious cases that went to the emergency rooms. And what though happened was that it emerged afterwards that it was really more about the silencing of women's voices, because there was, and there were, in my involvement with the Pepisa Survivors Network in one of the provinces in South Africa, it became clear that women in a way had a choice, because what else perhaps one doesn't know is that President Ramaphosa called on the military. There were thousands of military on the streets, keeping people in their homes, particularly during lockdown level 5 and 4. And there were stories where women tried to escape from an abusive partner and ran into the streets. And there was one particularly moving story of a woman who was then nabbed by the police, and she tried to explain to them why she was on the streets, and she wasn't supposed to be, and they didn't listen, and they frog marched her back to that same abusive home, and really didn't take it seriously. And when she tried to speak, they said, "Oh, you must just go for a protection order on Monday." But in the meantime, she had to spend the whole weekend with this now enraged partner who, and clearly her situation was a lot worse after that than before. And so there was that. But then also, just very quickly, I don't want to use all the 8 minutes, and you'll be able to read about it in my chapter, which is chapter 1. There was this explosion of rage that blindsided all of us in South Africa as we got down to lockdown level 3, and there was more mobility. And that was, also a time when people like Atari and my own teenage daughter and others, there was this terror, because there was just one incredibly brutal murder of a woman after another, after another, after another. And as a country, we have experienced a lot of collective trauma, and it hasn't gone away. In fact, the beginning of this year, between May and June this year, we just recently got a statistic. I can't remember the overall statistic, but when I calculated it, it was 108 women a day that were raped. So yes, it has got a lot worse, and mental illness has got worse, and that's the third co-pandemic in a way. We have COVID, we have gender-based violence, as I think Sue said in the chat, that has been recognized by the president as a co-pandemic, and now we have a third, which is mental illness, and we have a lot of work to do as as church, as the NGO sector, and in ourselves, as Anne-Marie has indicated. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Daniela. And then the second question about the book, I think we are going to entrust FutureChurch to make the ebook available. And we will talk about the costing and that, but we will hand that over to you because it's being it's being printed here in South Africa. And so we don't have hard copies to send to the US unless we can get somebody in the US who will print the book for us. But at the moment, I think we'll rely on the ebook being distributed by FutureChurch. Thank you.
Oh, that is great news. Thank you. So Caitlin, or am I saying your name correctly, or Kathleen? I'm not sure.
That's it, Kathleen.
Kathleen, thank you.
Thank you for letting me share. And this is more of an observation and a call to those women. I live in the United States in Southern California, and I was listening to everything and soaking it in. And it was like a spiritual awakening for me to recognize that the pandemic in other countries, other than the United States, is fraught, like what was said, a second epidemic. And here we are, worried about masks, no masks, and things like this, when the gender violence and poverty and things that are accentuated, that we are truly a global community, which was emphasized, and we need to step forward. We need to embrace as sisters and in God, sisters in spirit, to be able to make it known. And I will pass this message on. And I will also bring it to the organizations of which I'm a part of. I'm a secular Franciscan, and I will pass it on there. So I just want to thank you so much.
Thanks, Kathleen. Just so everybody knows, this is being recorded and we'll be sending you the link so you can send this out generously to all your networks. So we'll take Rita's question and then that'll be it for the day. So
I echo Kathleen's comment there, and hearing Tari, I believe the slam poet, really moved me. And then hearing the statistics or the estimate of the statistics called to mind an article I read about a year ago about femicide in Mexico. And being Deb and Russ being so internationally connected, I'm wondering in Nontando through the Theologians Association, if there were a way we could support the women of Mexico, or if you've heard of any similar endeavors there to really call it out. I mean, this is a Catholic country, huge, and the same thing like in El Salvador. And here our US bishops have lobbied against the Violence Against Women Act because they say it includes support for gay women and transgender women. I mean, I can't verify that that's the actual reason, but I do know that they lobby against it. So there's something wrong here. Jesus listened to the Samaritan woman. That was one of the longest theological discussions. He supported women who spoke out. And so this is a question, is there any way to connect and, like let these other women know we're supporting them, even if just spiritually, and then hopefully in other ways. Thank you. It's been brilliant hearing all of you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rita. It's great to see you and hear you. And I think this book opens up connections with women around the world. And I think that's what you're suggesting in Mexico, maybe Asia, US, that it can be a forum where we can come together. So thank you for that idea.
Gosh, thank you all. I'm going to turn this back over to Russ, and he's going to give us our final goodbye and blessing and the final thank yous.
Thank you to Nontando for pulling this incredible panel of wise women. I heard the Holy Spirit speaking through each and every one of you, teaching us, instructing us, encouraging us, challenging us. So thank you. And thank you to everyone for joining us today at this special time. We really appreciate being able to bring these voices to you